Ellen did not notice the stranger until she checked the heart monitor in room 312 and saw a second silhouette reflected in the dark glass screen. It was 2 in the morning on the 4th floor of St. Jude's Memorial Hospital. Sitting in the vinyl visitor chair was a tall figure wearing a dull beige trench coat, his hands resting flat on his knees, staring directly at the bare pale wall. 10 minutes earlier, that exact same coat had been draped over a chair in room 304, and when Ellen looked down at the floor roster on a clipboard, she realized 4 different patients had noted a visitor late, yet the main entrance log at the front desk was completely empty. To understand why that quiet discovery made Ellen pack her locker and leave her nursing career behind forever, we have to go back to the beginning of her shift. Ellen had worked night shifts for 6 years, and she was thoroughly accustomed to the strange, quiet rhythms of a hospital after midnight. St. Jude's was an older suburban building, constructed in the late 1960s, with long, dimly lit corridors and heavy fire doors that echoed whenever they swung shut. The 4th floor was reserved for long-term recovery, a quiet wing where patients spent weeks regaining their health. Nothing truly unusual had ever happened on Ellen's shift before that humid Tuesday evening in October. Her shift began like any other night at 7 in the evening. She took detailed handoff notes from the departing day nurse, organized her medication cart, and began her routine hourly checks. The floor was low capacity that night, with only 7 beds occupied along the south hallway. By 11 o'clock, the overhead fluorescent lights were dimmed to help the patients rest, casting long amber shadows across the worn linoleum flooring. The only ambient sounds were the steady, rhythmic hum of oxygen concentrators, the occasional ping of an IV pump, and the soft squeak of Ellen rubber shoes as she moved from room to room with her binder. It felt entirely ordinary and peaceful. At midnight, Ellen entered room 304 to check on an elderly gentleman named Arthur, who was slowly recovering from hip surgery. As she replaced his saline drip bag, she noticed a figure sitting quietly in the visitor chair near the window frame. The room was dark, illuminated only by the faint green light of the heart monitor. The visitor was a tall person wearing a heavy beige trench coat, sitting perfectly still with his head tilted downward toward his lap. Ellen assumed it was Arthur's adult son, who had mentioned dropping by late after work. She spoke softly, asking if he needed an extra blanket, but the figure did not answer or move. Assuming the man was simply exhausted, or sleeping deeply with his eyes hidden in the shadow of his high coat collar, Ellen stepped out without pressing the issue further. She walked down the quiet hallway to room 308, where an elderly woman named Clara was sleeping soundly. Ellen opened the door just wide enough to check the vital signs monitor on the wall. In the corner of the dark room, bathed in the same faint green glow, sat a visitor in a heavy beige trench coat. Ellen paused in the open doorway. She felt a sudden ice-cold chill along the back of her neck. Clara had no family listed on her chart. Ellen stepped backward into the hallway and pulled out her clipboard. She walked back to the central nurses' station to review the electronic visitor check-in system. The security desk downstairs registered every single person who passed through the sliding front doors after hours. According to the monitor screen, no visitors had signed in since 8:15 that evening. Ellen looked up at the quiet, empty hallway. The doors to rooms 304, 308, and 312 were all heavy wood-paneled doors, left slightly ajar as per night protocol. A faint movement caught her eye in the reflection of the glass display cabinet across from her desk. It was only 3 weeks later, while reviewing archived hospital floor plans, that Ellen understood what the layout of those 3 rooms actually meant. But that night, she was simply trying to complete her rounds. She decided to check room 312, the room furthest down the south wing corridor. When she stepped inside, the air felt unnaturally cold, heavy with the sharp metallic smell of old dust and ozone. The figure in the beige coat was sitting in the corner chair, positioned in the exact same posture as the visitors in the previous 2 rooms. His smooth, pale hands were resting perfectly flat against his knees. Ellen stood near the foot of the bed, her heart pounding heavily against her ribs. She looked at the patient sleeping soundly in the bed, then looked back toward the corner chair. That was when she noticed the detail that made her stomach drop into total horror. The visitor cast no shadow on the wall behind him, despite the bright monitor screen glowing right beside his shoulder. Even more unsettling, when Ellen looked up into the small convex security mirror mounted high in the corner of the ceiling, the visitor chair appeared completely empty. The beige coat was not there. The figure was not there. Only the bare vinyl seat reflected in the mirror. If you are finding this account unsettling, please take a short second to like this video and subscribe to help us share more hidden true stories. As Ellen stared at the empty chair in the ceiling mirror reflection, the figure sitting in the physical chair began to move. His head slowly tilted upward, degree by degree, until he was looking directly up at her reflection in that convex ceiling mirror. He did not have a defined human face, only smooth, pale skin where eyes and mouth should have been. Ellen did not scream. The deep silence in the room was so thick that even her own shallow breathing felt dangerously loud. She backed slowly out of the dark room, her trembling hand sliding along the cold door frame, and walked briskly toward the staff break room. She needed to reach the wall phone and contact hospital security immediately. But as she passed the open doors of the remaining rooms along the dark corridor, she glanced inside each one. In room 302, in room 306, and in room 310, the beige coat was sitting in every single visitor chair. 5 identical figures, sitting in absolute silence across the entire palliative care unit, waiting for the night to pass. None of them moved. None of them made a single sound. Ellen reached the nurse's station, grabbed her personal leather bag from behind the counter, and pressed the call button for the elevator repeatedly. She did not wait for her night shift supervisor to arrive, nor did she finish her mandatory shift log entries. When the metal elevator doors slid open, she stepped inside immediately and kept her eyes fixed on the floor panel until she reached the main lobby level. She walked straight past the front security desk, out into the cold, damp night air, and drove home in complete silence. She submitted her formal resignation by email early the next morning, citing sudden personal health reasons, and never stepped foot inside St. Jude's again. To this day, many unsettling questions remain completely unanswered about that night. Who or what was the entity wearing the beige trench coat, and why did it appear in every patient room simultaneously across the unit? Official hospital records show that all 5 patients on the floor that night passed away peacefully in their sleep over the next 48 hours, their medical charts noting no sudden distress or operational failure. Today, Ellen works as a private home care nurse, far away from large hospital wards. She never leaves a chair facing a bed in any room she enters, and she always checks the mirrors before stepping into a dark space at night. Some things in this world operate just beyond the edge of human understanding, watching quietly from the darkest shadows while we carry out our ordinary daily routines. Perhaps the most disturbing thought of all is that the stranger sitting in the beige coat was not there to cause harm, but was simply waiting for a quiet moment that every single one of us must eventually face. Have you ever noticed something deeply wrong during a quiet late-night shift? Share your own strange and unexplained encounters in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to join us for more chilling accounts of creeping dread next week.